Today, I'm pleased to welcome our guest, David Strebinger, who is the co-founder and CEO of Paywith. Just a quick bio on him, a little bit of background. He is the co-founder and CEO of Paywith Worldwide. He's a serial entrepreneur that founded his first company at the age of 27, and he has built and launched numerous technology, hospitality, and real estate businesses since. So we're very, very grateful to have David on the call today with us. Yeah, so David, thank you very, very much for joining us. Why don't you give us a little bit about yourself, of your personal professional background, and what led you to found Paywith, and what is it all about for those that are joining us?
Terrific. Well, thank you very much for having me, Tyler. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say that I've loved working with you guys from the beginning, and I think you guys have done a fantastic job in terms of what you've done for our business and helping us move things forward.
Thank you.
As Tyler said, I am the co-founder of Paywith Worldwide, which I started in 2013 with my co-founder, Don Kirkwood. And at that time, the purpose of the business was really just to figure out the best ways for consumers to pay with mobile devices. And whether that was using QR codes, whether that was using digital payments, whether that was transferring money, or using card payments and the payment network with your mobile device and tapping a card on a terminal. All of those have been innovations and explorations that Paywith has been involved with and pioneering for the last almost a decade now. I've been a serial entrepreneur now for going on 25 years. I started my first company at the age of 27, and we grew that company and sold that company. And by the time I was 29, I was on to my second company. In my 30s, I spent a little bit of time as an investment banker. And I was the president of an investment banking firm for about 4 years. And then I got the itch to get back into being the CEO and the driver of the companies rather than the funder of the companies. And so I jumped back in and haven't looked back. I've been developing out technologies ever since.
And David, how come you focused on the fintech space? I mean, the innovation coming out of this fintech sector, right? Especially, these digital payment sector has just been a phenomenon over the past few years. How did you innovate and carve out and jump from investment banking and want to go into, the payment space, which is such an aggressive market right now?
Yeah. Well, so it wasn't actually the payments industry that I was trying to solve when we first got in. We were actually trying to help businesses and small and medium-sized businesses get more attention and facilitate the linkage between their online transactions and their offline transactions, and how they could tie that to more tangible marketing and communications. And we were at the time developing out all kinds of offers and loyalty and rewards programs for companies that were utilizing, Facebook ads and Google ads to drive their sales. And one of the things that we found was there was a disconnect in connecting to bricks and mortar businesses. And so we needed to find that solution that would connect the bricks and mortar transactions with the online and digital transactions. And that's what led us into the payments world. And ever since then, there's just been so many new innovations that we've been able to take advantage of and build into our platforms and work with organizations from a consulting and professional services perspective that has just continued to evolve. And now that just seems to be our niche.
Nice. So this platform that you've built, I mean, can any companies use it, and how would a company engage with you? What does it benefit a business that works with your platform and the card payments or the M-Cards program that you have?
Yeah, interesting question. So one of the things that we found as we were working with various different enterprises and organizations is no matter how big or small you are, you have limitations in what you can do based on the traditional payment ecosystem. So when you're trying to work within the realm of banks and issuers and processors and networks that are all connected in this ecosystem to facilitate your payment solutions, like most of the fintechs that we're seeing emerging today are, there are lots of limitations in that traditional ecosystem that were hard to work around. And they're very time consuming and costly. And so anyone who wants to kind of try and innovate in that is fighting an uphill battle. So what Paywith specialized in developing out was basically a plug and play ecosystem that any organization can launch a program and or a card solution in market at about 1/10 of the cost and 1/10 of the time that it would take to get to market, because we've already plugged in all of the entire ecosystem that you need with all of the certifications and approvals required to get you going. So effectively, you lease our ecosystem and you launch a card program and brand your card program, and we help you plug in the features and the capabilities that you're looking to add that make your card unique and make that card become top of wallet.
Wow. So if I'm a small business and I want to start a loyalty program that might have some points programs and things like that, I come to you guys and you can plug it into an existing group of already existing offers with other companies, so that I'm not creating something from scratch?
That's right. Yeah. So effectively, what we've done is we are not the card program. You are the card program. It's your brand, it's your communication, and it's your distinct, unique value proposition that you're presenting to your customer. But we give you the entire ecosystem as a plug and play system behind the scenes to be able to launch innovation, as well as just get your card program to market as quickly and easily as possible.
Excellent. So if I do that with you guys, do I still, sort of keep that client and the data that comes off that program? Do I see that information?
Absolutely, yeah. So your client and all of your data and your information, in fact, we enhance that quite dramatically by providing you with a bunch of tools and analytics and insights that come off of the back of our already existing platform. But all of the data and the information is all yours, and it's available through APIs that you can access.
Right. Well, I mean, from an EverEdge standpoint and valuing intangibles, we love companies that are, gathering data, building these platforms, and because, those are significant intangible assets that most times companies, undervalue. I mean, how do you protect these assets? You're building this unique platform, and it has sort of infinite capabilities attached to whatever you can do with it. How are you protecting your unique advantage, and how would you protect those assets, in the market?
So, when we talk about intangibles, at least the way that I see intangibles, you can protect through things like patents and trademarks and trade secrets. You can protect your business through things like client relationships and contracts that you put in place. But the biggest thing that actually protects us from a business perspective is the enormous barriers to entry that it would take for somebody to replicate what it is that we've built and how we've put the pieces together. So it's taken Paywith, working in this industry, almost a decade to figure out and architect all of the different pieces of the ecosystem and put them together in such a way that you can plug in things and make it infinite in nature in terms of adding features and capabilities in the future. And there is, to our knowledge, there may only be one or two companies in the world that have actually found the same path or a similar path in connecting the dots and kept it compliant and regulatorily sound, such that Google, Apple, MasterCard, Visa, and all of the issuing banks and processors that you need to work with are all comfortable checking those boxes, because that ecosystem is made up of many billion-dollar organizations that all have various different, very focused areas in which they want to play themselves, and they want to keep everybody else out. And you have to design systems that literally make every one of them happy along the way for a system to be able to do what it is that we do. That to us is our biggest barrier to entry, is navigating the path and finding the way to building it.
Right. That's great. I think, helping those companies to understand that if they can start to collect that data in that ecosystem, you're actually setting them up to be protected with your barriers in essence, because you've got a way to actually start to adapt to or a way to actually use the data that you're collecting for them, and they can connect with all of those big players. But I think one of the major issues that we see is when people put in significant amount of time and a significant amount of time and energy into building these types of programs, there's a high level of intangible assets that they're building and growing that the value isn't necessarily seen because it's either off balance sheet or it's not accounted properly. How can how do you ensure that the current and potential value of you working with a company and that their business value is going to be recognized if they do a program with you?
So we rely a lot on identifying the key performance indicators for every one of our organizations that we work with, identifying the key performance indicators that really shift from being an intangible to a completely tangible asset. And what I mean by that is, if I know that every single account that I onboard is on a path and a plan to generate, say, $20 or $30 per month in revenue off of that card program. And if I know that the first month I should be generating $4 a month in revenue, by the 7th month I should be generating $8 a month in revenue, and by the 12th month I should be generating $20 a month in revenue, and we can track those KPIs, then the intangible of the $12 that doesn't exist today is actually on track and becomes tangible as we execute with the organizations we're working with. So part of the exercise, and one of the things that we loved working with you guys on, is just identifying what those exact key performance indicators and those risk profiles are, so that we can track against it and make sure that as we are going, our story of where we're going and the value of what's I call under the waterline, if you're looking at it from an iceberg perspective, what's under the waterline versus what's above the waterline. How do we track that under the waterline is starting to come up and submerge more and more as we start hitting on those KPIs? And you have to identify and be very clear on what those KPIs are that drive that iceberg up to the waterline.
Right. I mean, so look, we work with a lot of companies that don't fully understand or go to that process, like you said, of just identifying those intangible assets. And you work with a significant amount of companies as well. I mean, why do you think companies tend to underestimate the value of their intangibles?
I think so depending on the size of the corporation, and it's actually more prevalent in larger corporations than in smaller corporations. Once you get to a certain size, there's no one visionary that is necessarily driving that and setting the tone for the benchmark of where that business is going. There are a bunch of people, almost a committee, that has a distinct silo of things that they're accountable for and looking at to optimize in a business, versus understanding what the collective of all of those things are together and where the business can go. And so when you look at smaller companies, like a lot of the fintech companies and a lot of the new, more innovative companies that are coming to market today, I think they understand that their biggest value is this intangible, but communicating it and getting it across to people is a difficult thing because they haven't yet got the results that they need to justify it to the market. When you're a big, huge corporation, you miss it altogether, because you don't have the visionary actually driving what is the intangible that we're shooting for and how are we going to get there to expose that intangible. You have a whole bunch of siloed individuals optimizing and dialing down on the benefits of what they've already created.
That's a really good perspective. I think from a strategy perspective, breaking down those silos with companies is something that we try and help companies do. And I think with your perspective in terms of strategy, and if you were to launch a program with a company, how do you make sure that they start to value those intangibles, or how do they use those with your company? What would be your advice to companies regarding making sure that they are recognizing those opportunities, and how would working with you, increase that value?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we work with an organization, the very first thing that I try and understand is who in the organization are we working with, and what are their specific KPIs and what are their particular goals and ambitions? And then how does that relate to their boss's goals and ambitions and or the overall corporation's goals and ambitions? When I talk about big corporations, many times we're working, like a great example is one of the biggest airline companies that we work with. We worked with their loyalty division to create an entirely new loyalty program. Now, the airline itself is not a loyalty company. The airline is an airline, and their objective is bums in seats and flying people on planes. The loyalty company's job is to put bums on seats and fly people in planes, but to get more and more people engaged with their loyalty program to put more bums in seats. When I'm working with somebody in that particular department, I'm actually working with the person that is creating the new program that is the breakout program for that particular industry segment. We don't even get to start by working with the CEO of the loyalty company or the CEO of the airline, right? But if we can create a path for the organization that we're working with that says, listen, if we can do this thing over here, and we apply that all the way through, all the way right to the entire organization, right to the CEO of the entire airline, and we can create a path on what that impact of this thing that we're working on can do to the entire corporation, then we can start to get everybody in the entire line and the entire chain sold on the idea that if we hit these certain targets, then the ripple effect is bigger and bigger and bigger and higher through the organization. And when you look at it as an individual project, that project might have started out as a project that got, a couple $1 million of R&D budget to get going and surfaced, right? By the time you actually end up, that one sliver of the organization can be generating revenues that dwarf, many of the other parts of the organization. You create that silo as the fintech within the enterprise. Mm-hmm. And that fintech is then communicating clearly to all of the people involved what their KPIs are and what they're doing to actually transform that company and that entire enterprise to seeing things in a different light.
Yeah, that's a great example of sort of maximizing the value of intangibles. You might have two silos with the similar team member, similar budget, but one just explodes and the other doesn't because they've done something different, right? I mean, you work with airlines, and I know a case study about 10 years ago, Qantas Airlines, they were having trouble, and they made more money from their loyalty program, at least more profit from their loyalty program than they did flying people around the world. So, indeed. Yeah. I haven't seen the most recent things with COVID, but it's very possible that could be similar today.
Yeah, Qantas is a fascinating company. They're a great company to work with. They've done amazing things with their loyalty program. Olivia Worth, who runs their loyalty program, is a phenomenal entrepreneur and business driver, and I think she's done a great job with the business. And they continue to amaze me in terms of what they're doing and how they're thinking outside the box.
Yeah, well, you have much more inside information than I do these days. So excellent. The fintech space is changing so fast, and with what's happening in the markets and your business, where to from here for Paywith? I mean, what's next, and what can we expect to see?
So along the way, as Paywith has been doing a lot of program development and consulting and design and implementation of programs for various different enterprises, we really kind of learned a lot about what is in the way. And as I mentioned earlier, there's this kind of one limitation that exists that everybody is bumping up against in the fintech space, and that is the traditional ecosystem and traditional cards. They just don't work in the way that they need to work. If you were to design them today, you would design them differently than we did 50 years ago. And yet what we're doing today is we're taking a piece of plastic, and that piece of plastic and the way that piece of plastic works is being put into a mobile phone, and it still works exactly the way that it did before. So we haven't changed the actual payment side of things. So recently what Paywith did was we created a new product called M Cards. And M Cards are what we believe is going to be the future and the future of card industry. Credit cards, prepaid cards, debit cards, they're all very specific and they're limited in what they can do. I liken them to CDs of the music industry, where you've got a piece of plastic and everything that you want is burned into that piece of plastic, and it's the same for everybody that buys that CD. So if that piece of plastic exists and it's if it's, you know, Def Leppard is that CD, you've got every single song that you wanted on that CD, and that's all it does. It doesn't do anything more than that. When you look at how these phones were built, that's not how phones were built. Phones were built to have apps, and you can just add apps as you please, and you can personalize your entire experience. M cards is that for the card industry. You have a mobile token that you can add apps to, and every single app that you add is a feature add-on or a benefit to the card that you're transacting with. And when you transact with that one card, it's intelligent enough to pull from those benefits, those loyalty benefits, those rewards programs, those enterprise benefits, those whatever the apps are that you've added and personalized. So the experience is very similar to, you know, we think that the industry is going to very rapidly evolve to this kind of streaming media of features and fintech capabilities. And we want to be the pioneer, and we want to help power the most innovative companies out there. And we want to see as many M cards in market as we can. So that's our main focus, and that's the drive that I'm pushing for these days.
So people don't have to carry around, you know, 20 or 30 plastic cards and multiple loyalty cards, and no matter where they're at, they can use the same card.
I can get rid of my Costanza wallet and and just replace it with one card that I pay with. And when I pay with that one card, it intelligently accesses my rewards, my loyalty, my benefits. It gives me my points from whatever cards I'm associating it to, and just really maximizes and optimizes my experience as a consumer, and intelligently processes on my behalf.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it really is the next generation. It's moving away, like you said, CDs. It's a great analogy, you know, going away from traditional plastic to an app base that when you want a new feature, you can just download it. I'm very excited to. Who have you rolled this out with, and how far along is it? You know, and if I'm a client, how can I, you know, get in touch with you to join this M cards, you know, product?
Yeah, M cards has been 3 years in the making, getting the platform certified, getting the systems in place. We launched 3 weeks ago. I'm just in the process of doing a raise to really accelerate the growth and the expansion of M cards, and so we're really excited about that. We just started doing that with an investment bank in New York called Senna Hill. And yeah, there's lots of opportunity, and anybody who wants to chat with us, I'll make sure that we give you my information, and we can have a chat and see if there's an opportunity to get a card launched for you.
Well, look, David, you know, thank you so much for your time. It's always great to hear from sort of leading industry experts. Obviously, in this fintech space, you know, you're blazing a trail. We're really excited to see what's coming down the road, and you know, really focusing on those. The idea of helping companies to maximize those intangibles, you know, the collection of data and turning KPIs into actionable management tasks are something that most companies are struggling with. And so providing a solution to that is something that, from our standpoint, we know that many companies need. And from a consumer side, I mean, you're going to the business to business route, but really this is going to be something that really supports the consumer in the long run.
Yeah.
So look, I mean, thank you again for joining us today. Oh, you know, do you have any final comments or advice you'd like to offer people who, you know, are either maybe in the fintech space or, you know, in the starting a business, because you've started so many, you know, how can they better maximize their value of their companies?
I'm gonna go back to my iceberg analogy, and I'm just gonna suggest that, you know, for many companies, a lot of what they've built and a lot of the value is still below the waterline. And the only way that you can surface that value is if people can see it. So enabling people to see it is really honing in, getting companies like EverEdge to help you unlock you know, what that value is and what that looks like and what those KPIs are, and creating that path so that you can really connect the dots between your story and your execution and start pushing what's under the waterline to above the waterline where everyone can see it.
Great. Well, David, thank you again for your time. Appreciate you joining us today, and we look for great things to come very, very soon with Paywith and with M cards.
Terrific. Well, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.